I want to welcome you first and thank you for coming and taking a day before spring break when it's really hard to get subs and all that. So I'm really happy you're here. My name is Julie Kallenbach and I am the former Director of Early Learners in Elgin. I supervised the preschool for all, the special ed preschool, the birth to 3 home visiting, and Elgin was a little forward thinking, and I also supervised kindergarten. So they recognized that kindergarten falls under the umbrella of early childhood where not everybody does. Really, it's birth to 3rd grade that falls under early childhood, and that's why the Birth to 3 project is trying to do more alignment between birth all the way to 3rd grade. So I also work for ISB as a kids coach and trainer for the kids assessment. So if you're DuPage or Kane County, I'm also your kids coach. So I'd love to connect up with you today to make sure we can talk more about that. And my partner in crime?
I'm Pat Chamberlain. I did what she did. I was also the director of early learners in Elgin U46 before her.
She just keeps dragging me along with her.
So now you know what kind of person I am, be careful. I fake retired about 10 years ago, and since then have been working. I teach some courses at Erickson Institute on emergent literacy for young dual language learners, which syllabus is not done yet and needs to be done by the weekend. I also have, I was the project director for the Accelerate Awards of Excellence project around culturally and linguistically diverse children. I also had the opportunity to work with Elena Bordrova and Debbie Leong, who have laid the foundation of the work we're going to do today. And I've had the opportunity to do that both in Elgin, where we had Elena Bordrova come to us for a couple years to be our expert, to teach us, and then I got the chance to go to Santiago, Chile, and do it in a South American context, in kindergarten and preschool. And so, and then I do some other stuff. I'm hanging around a lot of I work in West Chicago. There's a crew over here in West Chicago that Julie and I do coaching with, and love this concept of the Birth to 3rd continuity project. It is what feeds our souls and what motivates us right now. And we've had the opportunity to work at several districts where we're working with preschool, kindergarten, and up to 1st grade now. And some talk about 2nd grade already. So we're seeing the fever. We're seeing the fever, and so we're really excited. We're really excited that anybody that has a more experience to have this conversation. We're really excited to have that conversation today because you know there's not a lot of you out there, right? And so to be able to have sort of the next level conversation is really exciting. Now, maybe some of you are more on the 2s, but there's a lot of 3s and 4s in the room. So if you need to stop us at any point to ask some questions and clarify, we're a small group, easy peasy, we'll have no problem with that, okay? So please stop. It'll be a very playful and interactive day.
Okay.
Oh, not that one.
Wrong way. Come on. There we go. So this is our, like Ashley said, this is our 3rd session. We've done some webinars, and then we did a session down in Springfield in the beginning of March that was really more basics about play. And we knew that we wanted to target a little more advanced here because there seems to be a lot more of play-based learning happening in preschool and kindergarten. And so I'm happy to see we did plan the presentation for people that are really a lot higher level. You already believe in play. You're already doing it. This is meant to be how to build your skills, and so I'm happy about that. About the Birth to 3 continuity project, so that is a really important concept that this is all built around, that we are intentionally aligning all of the different pieces from birth to 3rd grade. We're aligning assessments, data-driven improvement, so anybody here who's using the kids instrument and looking at data, that's one of the concepts, is trying to use the data from preschool and move it into kindergarten. So it is about trying to prevent the fade out that some research has shown, that we've got children in high quality early childhood programs and in preschool programs, And sometimes those gains are fading out by 3rd grade. But through research, we're knowing that if you make an alignment from those programs all the way up and push developmentally appropriate practice to kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, those gains will be maintained. And so it's a matter of shifting people's thinking that little 6, 7, and 8-year-olds think differently, and they don't change a lot in their developmentally way they learn from preschool to 2nd grade. They are really still needing to play. So that's where this is coming from with Birth to 3 Continuity Project. So the outcomes we hope for today is to reinforce what you already know about practices about incorporating play into learning. We want to really spend the day, what is the adult's role in looking at that child-directed play and helping them move to the next level in both academics and social. And then the whole afternoon, we're going to be playing and planning. You're going to get a chance to play and learn how to practice scaffolding play. And then you're going to have some time to think about, for your own settings, how do you plan for some upcoming units in incorporating play-based themes in that. And then we'll have a lunch, like she said, around 11:30, 12, whenever it gets here. The first thing we're going to do is, you've got this resource. This is yours to keep. We're going to take a little walk through here. The first page, I want you just to look at the table of contents. So open that so you can see how the book is laid out. So you can see it's got a section for the infantods, the preschool, kindergarten, and primary grades. If you look at Roman numeral 12, this is the key position paper, the key points out of the position paper about developmentally appropriate practice that has been published, that people follow, that we are going to really dig in and use these concepts and frameworks today of developmentally appropriate practice. Right after that, on page 1, take a look at page 1, here's the full position paper. So if you've never read it, it will ring so true to you, since you already believe in developmentally appropriate practice, but it reinforces that what you do is critical. Take a look at page 10. Here we have all of the principles of child development and learning that should inform your practice. It's easy to talk to teachers who have the early childhood license because you've been given a lot of child development. If you have the elementary license or an administrator license, you often haven't had the in-depth child development that all of this is based on. If we know how children learn and develop at the early ages, then we will teach them in the way they learn and develop. I just wanted to point out a chapter that should be your first one to read, chapter 1 on 33. This is the foundation of how to be an excellent teacher. If you read through this, and as an administrator, if you're not as familiar with early childhood, this will tell you what developmentally appropriate practice should look like in the classroom. And then I could keep going, but I'm going to just take you to page 49 for a minute. Of course, as I'm reading through this book, I hadn't seen this one before, this particular page, but it's about how NACI shifted the thinking to you can be both and instead of either or. You don't have to be an academic program or a play-based program. You don't have to be all about play versus more academics. It's the both and I pulled out a couple of my favorite points here. The teachers still have to have high expectations, but they do recognize that some kids need extra support, extra resources to function. Children also have to both construct their own learning, but that they also benefit from instruction by people who are more capable and peers that are more capable. And that also children benefit from self-initiated, spontaneous play, but also for teacher-planned playful activities and some more guiding in play. So it's not an either or. Play isn't just about letting them go and no outcomes about it. You have goals that you're looking for. Sometimes you'll see it in their spontaneous play. Other times you're structuring the situation so that you can guide their play more. The last one I'll do, because I could spend all day on this book. I think this is a good college course book. Even though it's older, I bet you they wouldn't let you buy it. But take a look at page 329 in the back. There's a whole section on frequently asked questions. And one of the questions that come up frequently is that, how do I explain to parents that we don't do worksheets, we don't send home homework, because that's not developmentally appropriate? There's some nice language in here to help you answer those questions for parents. So this is a good resource for you too, in a lot of different ways. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the book. It has a CD, that's hence 2009, when it came out, that there's still a CD. So none of us have CD players in our thing anymore, but they have videos and things in there that you might be able to use for staff development. All right. So when we talked about that and or, it's also, this is from the article Crisis in Kindergarten, and it shows that there's a continuum from a really highly structured, teacher-led instruction with following the curriculum exactly like it is, with little or no play, all the way down to a really loose, they play all day, there's a lot of chaos, and the adults aren't scaffolding that play to the higher level. Where we really want to see children, and I would say this is true for preschool, kindergarten, first and second grade, they're still having some time to explore through play and explore through inquiry-based learning with the teacher as an active, intentional partner. But there's also times the teacher's going to guide that learning and plan for rich experiential activities. So hopefully your classrooms fall in that balance. It's all about balancing, and I see this often when I go out for kids coaching, that how do you balance yourself in that playtime between taking evidence and scaffolding children's learning? There's a lot of planning that has to go into that too, about how do I plan out what skills I want to collect evidence on, and how can I take those teachable moments and not lose that interaction with the children. So that's the balance that's really hard for teachers. Okay, so we're going to start with the 2 developmentally appropriate practice foundational principles. And everything, if you only remember these 2 things, you will really have a developmentally appropriate program. You need to meet children where they are. And in order to do that, you need to have child development, and you need to know your children in your particular classroom. What's their home language? What are their interests? What's their culture like? What's their family structure? If you know your children, you will be able to plan much more challenging and achievable goals for them. This should be the mantra of every teacher. It's not about the curriculum. Those are your resources. It's not about what you typically do in September. Here's my first 4 weeks lesson plans. It really is about knowing exactly where your children are and moving from there. That's one of the principles of a birth to 3 continuity, is that you teach the children where they come in. You need to know that maybe if your children have been in a high quality preschool, they're already counting up to 20. You're not going to start the first day and work on counting 5 objects. So otherwise you're wasting your time. We have a lot of good writers in some of the districts that Pat and I work in. Their preschool kids leave with very strong writing skills. So when you go to kindergarten and your curriculum says, we're going to draw a picture and we're going to label, and we're just labeling, you've got kids that are probably writing sentences already. So if you don't know that, you won't, you're going to waste a month worth of time. We have children in preschool that don't need starter stems. They can come up with their own thinking on their writing. So you'll need to look in those files. As you're planning any transition activities in your district, ask for a writing sample. Preschool teachers, provide a writing sample for them, because it gives them a starting point. So once you meet them where they are, you're still going to have challenging and achievable goals. One of the things I hear all the time is that, well, you have to put more rigor in your preschool. You have to put more rigor in kindergarten. And I argue that you need challenging but achievable goals. You have to look at all their levels and provide the supports. And we go back to that ZPD, that zone of proximal development. That is a Vygotskian concept. If you have the green area talks about what students can do independently. So you need to know that so that you're not doing things that they can already do and they get bored and then the behaviors pop out. You can't be up in those the high pink area where you're putting goals that are way too high for them that they're not going to achieve. It has to be within their zone of proximal development. So that's the tricky point, knowing where they are and knowing what you can help them learn just with scaffolding. All right, so why do we play? I hated to mark, oh, I think the teacher of these children might be in the room. Yes, that was from your classroom. So we really want children to play for a variety of reasons. This particular kids, they have a book they made of block structures and things, but look at how they made the same exact one like each other. I mean, talk about learning. That is really intense learning. Another reason is that if the American Academy of Pediatrics says you should play, parents and teachers start to pay attention to it. So read this to yourself first. I think we know that, but when a doctor starts saying that to their patients when they're coming in, what is their play like? How do they play? We want that to be happening. But this is, I finally put this picture in here because I've talked about it. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter and a 6-year-old granddaughter that you're going to hear about.
A lot.
A lot, because I want to talk about them. But I had the 3-year-old babysitting one day, and we were playing dolls, and she went and put her doll in the chair and went and found a toy tablet and put it on her lap. And that to her, and I've seen her do it other times, she's put the baby doll in bed with a toy phone. Now, her mother is a very at-risk, I have a very at-risk daughter. I have an idea that they're on the phone constantly when they're at her house, so they never get it at my house. But kids only play what they know. This is what she knows, is that we give kids tablets. And we are going to see in about 3 or 4 years some major issues with paying attention. And my optometrist also said he's already seeing the issues with the eyes because of the close screen. So why do we play in a preschool or kindergarten classroom is because they often don't have this opportunity at home. I was at a restaurant the other day and I saw them, it was just me and this mom here, and she had a 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old was not really talking much. And the mom was on her phone, and then that little 2-year-old had a total meltdown. And of course, mom, here, you can have the phone, because she wanted her phone. And then nobody's talking to her. So I'm just experiencing it more and more. And so we can't. When we're using technology in the classroom, we need to be using it for functional reasons. And I love when I hear people say, but we let them play a bunch of games on the tablet. Well, a lot of times that's just an electronic worksheet. So, you know, the technology needs to be a resource, but they need to spend all their time with you in more developmentally appropriate ways. I just would like you to talk at your table for a minute, just what spoke to you from this, and then I'll just see if I can get an idea from each table. So talk to somebody at your table about what you pulled out of this.
I was just saying that I love the example of the rats and how those that did have play, that they were able to kind of problem solve and investigate and, you know, figure out a difficult situation. And I think a lot of times individuals that don't have play are those that are not able to problem solve and are not able to fix situations on their own. And they were talking as well, Deborah mentioned that there's studies that show that in his book that individuals that were in prison, a lot of them do not have play. And we talked about how, you know, maybe their lack of play led to them confronting those situations and not solving them in an adequate or appropriate way, which would lead them to going to jail.
Absolutely. And that reminds me, and this is maybe as a couple of, it's getting older, but I'm hoping and I'm sure we're examining the play histories and the background of all of our school shooters and the guy from Austin. There's a pattern with, you know, a white young guy in his 20s. What happened to those kids when they were young that has led to that? How about at your table? Who wants the mic?
We were also talking about the history of play and how we've seen it actually kind of move out of the schools, and we see that it's more assessment-wise and curriculum-based wise, and we forget that kids really need the different types of play, like social play, but especially rough and tumble play. We see that it's a hands-free zone. Kids aren't allowed to touch. Kids aren't allowed to push around and play tag and kind of wrestle, and we see that now those kids don't really know what to do with themselves and how to release those pent-up feelings that they need to get out, and that's where we see the shift of when they get into adulthood, they don't know how to express or even play with other children in the right way.
Right. Absolutely. How about your table?
To piggyback off of what she said, we talked
Have to use the
about,
mic, we're being taped.
we talked about the rough kind of play, quote unquote. That's what my husband does. They wrestle with the kids, and that's important. And then run to mom when they get hurt for the cuddle play. So, but like she had said, at school, it's hands-free, you can't touch, and in the video he was saying how that's important at school also. So, my youngest son went to school and was wrestling with a little girl. And she's like, I like Ian, but he likes to body slam me. Well, he had learned that at home from wrestling and wrestling with dad. So, so yeah, we talked about that, how important play is.
There's a lot of research about why you have dads play with kids, and when they're often the ones that do a lot more, they're throwing them up in the air and giving them all that kinesthetic movement, and why we need men in the children's lives and why we need men in education. How about your table? Anything different that you took away?
Basically, we talked about how play just promotes problem solving, and the more we allow them to play, the more we allow them to work together, that their problem solving skills have improved. Now it's taken a while, it's a process, but that's why it's important to play for a long time and really incorporate that day in, day out so that these skills can improve each and every day.
Right. That reminds me of a district that I've been doing some coaching in, and I met with their kindergarten teachers, and they don't play in kindergarten there. But one teacher is starting to have a principal that's supporting play, and she is doing play on Mondays. They can at least play on Mondays. But she's keeping data, and the data, the attendance rate has gone way up on Mondays, and the behaviors have gone down. So, she's a smart thinker doing some action research on her own, but with the ESSA laws and things, the guidance we have now, attendance is one of the things we can measure in early childhood. So that's an incredible movement if she can prove that attendance goes up when we play. Anything at your table that hasn't been said?
We talked about the opposite of play is depression, and thinking about how you cram, well, my thought was, we're cramming 20 or more children into a classroom, and they're together for 6 hours a day, and then they go home and they have a load of homework to do. And I just remember as a child, my play was always outside. We were making mud pies and crossing the brook on the stones and running through the woods. So they're on screens and doing homework, and they're not getting out much.
Right. And one of the articles from NACY talks about how play is a social justice issue. Children from lower incomes often don't have safe playgrounds, any playgrounds, safe neighborhoods where they can go outside, and then they go to schools where they've got a learning gap, so they feel like we need to put even more interventions and more academic learning in to help make up the gap when they've missed that critical window of play. So our last table.
That was a good segue for ours. In West Chicago, we've been doing a lot of training on trauma-sensitive schools and the impact of trauma on our students. And we were talking about how it connects to play because we have kids that are going through all these different things, and play allows them different ways to kind of work through their aggressions, and school can be a safe place to work those things out. And just me personally, I've taught preschool, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and I've seen the impact of no play on those upper grades, and they're not learning to work things out with each other. And now teaching preschool, the skills that we're giving them are definitely going to benefit them in the future.
Thank you. That gives me a segue to what I wanted to say was, one preschool teacher had told me about a play scenario that happened in her classroom where the children, it was a group of girls and they had been at the beauty salon, they'd made themselves a whole beauty salon, and then they decided to go to the mall, and while they're at the mall, one of the little girls yells, "The popo's coming, the popo's coming, dive, get down." And they had experienced something like that, but play gives a safe place to process feelings. I may have said this to some of you before. My oldest daughter had some medical stuff when she was younger, and so she would come home every day after a doctor appointment or a procedure and play doctor, because it helps you work through your feelings on that. One strategy that sometimes we learn in preschool and kindergarten is doing whisper reading. So I want you to whisper read to yourself for this. It may feel awkward, but try it. Why we whisper read is because many times our young, especially kindergartners, when they're learning how to read, it really helps them, and it helps develop self-talk too. So this is from the Center on the Developing Child from Harvard, which shows that executive functioning skills start at birth, right after birth, and then they have a huge climb, especially between that 3 and 6 to 7-year-old age. This is our window of opportunity of when we can really build those executive function skills, because then it starts to taper off. So if we miss this window, that's why you're seeing the first and second graders that can't deal with each other and problem solve, is because they haven't had the practice at using their executive functioning. When I looked at this, I was a little concerned when it shows after 60, it starts going down. But then I thought, oh, that explains my mom, loss of filter on everything. So we are in a critical time with we're developing their executive function skills. So especially on kindergarten, so this is also from the Crisis in Kindergarten, children in play-based kindergartners have a double advantage. They're either the same or better as children that came from those more didactic academic kindergartens, but they're also stronger in social and emotional. So we know that we need those for those healthy adjustment, just like those rats. Pat had read something lately about laughing, and that we need, adults need to laugh at least 3 times a day, or what happens?
Yeah, depression.
Depression. Yeah. If you really have a good belly laugh 3 times a day, you're going to be avoiding depression. And if you're not taking time for yourself to play, then you're not taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your students too. Okay, we're going to show some examples of developmentally appropriate practice, and that's one of the things I love about this book and all of the books, the companion books that go with it. They show you, here's what developmentally appropriate practice looks like, here's what it doesn't look like. So it gives a nice comparison, and so we're going to do a jigsaw, and you're going to dig into your books. I've done some recent training with kids coaches lately on adult learning, and so this rang to me because some of you are people that like adult learning where I'll stand here, lecture, give you everything you want. Don't make me talk to other people. Don't make me talk in groups. That would be me. That's kind of the professor. Where other people like the group work and the talking with each other, that's kind of the friends group. That is her. So we're going to try to give you enough today to meet each of your types of adult learning. So you heard the lecture part. Now we're going to move into doing a jigsaw on some chapters in the book. So you're going to each read your section, and we'll assign your sections in a minute. Then you're going to summarize with the people that read that section. And also, go ahead.
Underline summarize. Summarize means a shortened version. Remember, short, get big ideas, not every detail.
We did a workshop yesterday when they basically copied the entire article over on 2 pieces of chart paper. So you're going to get key ideas out of your section of the book and how that applies to your teaching. What implications do you have then for taking that knowledge, and what does that mean to you in the classroom? So you're going to have to pick a recorder, someone who's good with the chart paper and someone who's good at reporting. And then if you're done early from your section, then you'll be able to just explore the book on your own. So Who is preschool? Your preschool, your preschool. This worked out really nice. So there's some topics in the preschool section that we're going to have you cover. And then the kindergarten people are over here. Administrators and parent educators, if you'd like to look at your toddler section and share anything that would apply to teachers, you can do that. Or you can pick a section. So we're going to just debrief, and hopefully you've got somebody you've assigned to be your reporter. And as you hear something that, oh, you recognize some people. As you hear something and you have an idea of what you've done in your classroom, share that idea, because we really want you to go away with a toolbox of other ideas of what you've seen in your classroom. So, caring community and reciprocal relationships. Who's going to be a reporter for that one? Somebody's got to be.
Right?
Oh, when you download it, look what it did to the relationship.
I know.
Yep. Hold on, you get the mic. Takes a second. There you go.
So our number one was family and culture play a big part in play. This was really the respect between the students and families was huge. So culturally responsive was another big part. Taking into a big part was their culture. Make sure you bring that in because everybody comes from different backgrounds. Number two, in the preschool, because kindergarten didn't talk about assessment, but in preschool, assessment should be assessed during play, not by paper and pencil, but as we talked,
Woot, woot.
our kids' assessment really does that for kindergarten, which we appreciate. So number three, give students a variety of opportunities to play and problem solve independently. Model positive interactions. That was another big takeaway. Allowing all students to participate. This was a big section, especially your special education students, your ELL students. They really wanted to make sure that everyone was participating. And building a classroom community. That meant involving your parents, other staff members. And then in kindergarten, it took it a step further, and it meant to bring the outside community in. So if your students are playing a sport, hang those activities in your classroom. So bringing that in so that everybody could participate with them.
Is there anybody that does an activity that really helps you build your caring community or bring culture into the into your classroom? Thank you.
We do community connections.
And what do you do?
We invite the parents, their children, some staff members come, but we have it as a group connection. And we present on different topics of interest, and everyone participates. You know, everybody has something to say, and we think that's great because then parents are getting to know each other. They're getting to share ideas about what to do when they are preschoolers, so it's very helpful.
So you're building a caring community just of even of your parents.
Also in my school, when we do the mature play, the new thematic unit, we try to do a family project when we involve family, but not only that, we bring the family into the play so they can see and understand what we're doing in the school with play.
So that's a huge part because a lot of our parents haven't had the right opportunities to play either. And they get it. That's a great parent education activity to do is play. And you know, they learn a lot through play too. And the family project she's talking about, I've seen when they've done pandaria or you know, bakery, the parents all donate something to be sold in the bakery, suckers or donuts or all these things. So thank you.
I want to tell my story from that school. So one year, this was a year that we learned something. We had a family project. Somebody was doing the history museum, the natural history museum, remember? And the dad calls up and says, "Yeah, I got a truck today. Can I bring our project over?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I got a truck today." Oh, we never put any dimensions on how big the family project should be. Never thought about that. So Dad pulls up, and he's got a dinosaur. It was in Claudia's room, remember? It was like yay big. Yeah, it's hunormous dinosaur. And we were like, okay, we got a big old dinosaur in this little preschool room. And so sometimes a few more parameters on family projects would be a good thing. However, everyone knew, and the other part of this story is that the dad and mom said that they did this as a family project so that the teenage kids and the girlfriend of the teenage son participated in making this gorgeous dinosaur as well. And they were so appreciative because, you know, teenagers sometimes are too cool for school, right? And so and the girlfriend, so that it became a whole family project. And of course, the docent, when the kids invited the parents in, and they were docents and took them through the Natural History Museum, and they went to the snack bar and they bought, you know, their takeaway treats and all of that. The children were the docents were explaining everything as they went along. And it
was
was
this preschool or kindergarten?
This is preschool.
Preschool.
Saidi?
And also it's really powerful because if you do that since the beginning. See, if you do that, family involvement, I like that you remind me the word family project. They are expecting what is the new thematic unit in the little one-child classroom because all are involved. And then all can go and see what the other families did. So it's really powerful. But you need to start from the beginning and keep doing it through the whole year.
Right. And it just builds this community in a way that I've never seen it happen any other way as powerfully as that.
Now, that was a bilingual classroom. There's a lot of cultural involved in that the bilingual families send projects back and they participate. So if you don't have families that will send projects back, you need some kind of makerspace place where those kids can also make something too. So, one more thing, in the awards of excellence, Pat, was that one of her projects was the linguistic and culturally, I don't know how you say
Appropriate practices.
Appropriate practices. I got to be a reader, and one of the things that stuck out to me was bringing in some furniture or artifacts from a variety of cultures. Otherwise, it looks like, you know, IKEA in every classroom. And so, you know, they brought in some from an Indian culture, some of the art, the pottery, and they, you know, making it look like it's part of all the kids' classrooms.
I work in a Reggio school in the city in Chicago, and the population is primarily Mexican American in this part of, and so the color motifs, the draperies, they have tiles in the kitchen, sort of Mexican design tiles in the kitchen. They have tapestries, sarape kind of things as blankets to play, because these are things that are very familiar. They have a molcajete, what do you call that? Let me think. A mortar and pestle. I never say it in English. Yeah, I know it because we don't use it that much here, but in other places we use it a lot, right? So these are things that kids are, a tortilla press. Oh my gosh, I was in West Chicago, and somebody was I don't know, there was quite an assembly line on the tortilla press going, you know. And at tamales, I was at Winfield, I got tamales this week too. They were making tamales.
That was part of what I was going to share in West Chicago up until the other day when there was a bacon incident. We were all doing a cooking unit, and parents were invited in to cook recipes from their family. One of our teacher's assistants was teaching another class how to make pasta, like authentic pasta. And several classes were doing cooking units. And there was another point that I was going to say, and I can't think of it right now. So
You'll think of it later.
That's another really great one to create culture.
Right. So how about the Teaching to Enhance Development group? Who's your spokesperson there?
For the classroom environment, we talked about promoting social activity, so having enough space for them to involve themselves in dramatic play, and as far as like their tables goes, allow for small group interaction, not only with those kids at their group, but other kids in tables close to them, allow them to move around a little bit, some whole group areas, maybe your carpet, stuff like that. Give them time to play. They said like a half day, at least 45 minutes, a full day, at least an hour. And allow them to explore. Don't take them away from that just because, oh, it's time for calendar. No, if they're involved in it, they just let them keep going. Let them explore deeper and deeper until they can get their true meaning out of it. Because you might have 5 kids who develop a different meaning just by allowing them to explore that extra 10 minutes or so. And that just goes into being flexible in your schedule. The other day, I had students that were interested in healthy food versus junk food. We were doing math, and I'm like, we're done with math. We're going to go into this healthy food versus unhealthy food. And they just kind of brought up about stuff that they eat, so they brought their culture into it. And the best part was they were interested in it. They wanted to learn about it, so it was child-guided. And I didn't have to do anything other than we have the Promethean board, so I went on Promethean Planet, and I looked up somebody already created one, and of course, I made sure it was fine and whatever, and then they got up and they interacted with it, so they were able to learn, and it was it was pretty fun that way. As far as teaching methods goes, scaffolding is really important. You might have 20 students in a room, and all 20 of them might learn differently or at various levels, so you kind of have to understand who they are and how to scaffold for them. It's probably better if you put them in groups. And have hands-on and authentic materials. Like allow them to use manipulatives to count or to sort or to do whatever. But if you have objects in your room, let it be authentic. Like we were talking about, if they have a hammer, if you can bring in a real hammer, bring it. If you're talking about healthy foods, bring in real foods. Don't give them a fake orange. That's not healthy. They can't eat that. Vary their group sizes too. So you want some in small group, maybe a one-on-one, some whole group. Allow them to interact with different kids. If you notice, kids always kind of gravitate towards their best buddy or whatever. Sometimes you have to force them. We're going to go into groups of 7. We're going to count them off so it's random. Allow them to interact in different sizes. And child-initiated use, their interests. Pull it into it. Ask them about it. Talk about it. I like to start my Mondays up like, what did you guys do over the weekend? Let's draw about it. Let's talk about it. Write about it. And then I'll pull a couple students up and promote a little public speaking, as well as just getting their interest and sharing their interest with their friends. Because then as soon as one's like, oh, I have one student who has like peacocks, and then some other kids started talking about animals they have. So yeah, he's got baby chicks. And
Who knew?
yeah, he did. Yeah. Communication, expanding vocabulary. This was something that was hard for me as a first-year teacher. I would always kind of try to talk about down to their level, but just use these words in context and they'll pick them up. If you use them regularly and use them same with confidence and incorporate them into your lessons and stuff that they want to learn about, then they're going to pick up that word and they're going to go home and say it and use it in their own way. Honoring their home language. If they speak another language, allow them to use it, but also let them translate it to everybody else in the classroom. So if they say something, you got to explain it because I don't know what you're talking about. So whether they can draw a picture about it, whether they can demonstrate it, allow them to use that home language. Give them time to think and talk. If somebody's developing an idea, don't just move right on from them because they didn't spit it out right away. What I like to do is tell them to ask 3 friends, talk to 3 friends about it, develop an idea. Then we'll come back to you and we'll share it if they don't have the time. But every kid might need another minute or 2. Some kids might be able to pop it off right away. Just be warm and accepting to their language. If they say something incorrectly or if they just however they're talking, accept it as it is and kind of let them flow with it and make subtle changes. Don't kind of put them down especially using their home language. Definitely don't do that. But that is all we had.
Okay.
Awesome. I
Let
think
me
we need to
just
film
elaborate
in his.
on one point there on using home language. This is a really powerful, I'm really glad you brought that up because it's a really important thing in the state of Illinois because we have so many kids that speak different languages, right? So even if you don't speak the language of that child, of course you can use your English as a second language strategies. How many of you have ESL coursework or sort of endorsements? 1, 2, 3, a lot of you do. Okay. So you've already heard this spiel, but for those of you that haven't, the whole idea of this one, particularly like the turn and talk, if you have 2 Polish kids that can turn and talk in Polish about a concept in English, that will enhance their English language development. right? They don't have to tell you that in English. It will by itself enhance their English development. And so there's this counterintuitive notion of using home language takes away from learning second language, and it's actually the absolute opposite. So I was in a classroom where a third of the kids were Hmong, Lao Hmong speakers. This is in Wisconsin. A third were kids from Mexico, Spanish speakers, and a third were African American kids. The language going on back and forth, the Hmong, the Lao, the Hmong, the Spanish, the English was, you know, the kids knew who spoke what language and they would figure stuff out. There was a lot of code switching, right, using both languages, and we want to make sure that kids are using all of their linguistic resources, so that's just dandy. If you are a speaker of the other language as the adult, you're not going to code switch, but the kids can do it all they want. So just to make sure, underline that point.
And I know a lot of teachers say that it's really hard to get the kids to speak their home language. They just don't, and it takes a lot of work if you're in an English classroom, to bring in that language. But one of the best techniques is bringing in the families and letting them play with the kids. We were talking about a Polish-speaking classroom, a group of kids, and they will not speak Polish until the parents came in and played with them in Polish. Yeah.
Rahina and I have twins who speak Polish. One will speak openly, freely, share words with the group, and then his brother, who's in my room, wants nothing to do with it, and it's very interesting to see them interact with each other too. So.
Right.
Temperament matters.
Mm-hmm. And my own personal story with that, because my granddaughter's in a dual language classroom. She's English half day, Spanish half day, and so of course I'm turning to all my friends, what should I do to help her with her Spanish speaking? And they all said, you build up her English? And like, oh yeah. I know it, but I know it is as strong as her English is, then she'll transfer it to Spanish. So anyway, any other teaching and learning, anything out of that you wanted to add? Okay, then what's the next one? Let's go to the next slide. All right, who did the physical? Was it a group? Okay, who's the reporter for that one? You had physical and something else. We let the student teacher do it all.
Curriculum and physical.
Curriculum and physical.
Yeah, curriculum and physical.
So we did the curriculum essentials that are developmentally appropriate, and we saw also the contrast within that. One of the big things that we see since the beginning is the big ideas that we have in a kindergarten classroom. We really want to, when we plan our curriculum, see what they know and what's essential to their learning and their progress compared to having higher expectations. So we see lots of the time that, okay, they're in kindergarten, let's plan for what they're gonna do in first grade, second grade, and third grade, instead of actually really focusing on what the big idea for kindergarten is. And we also see that while we're planning our curriculum, we actually have to understand that all of the areas in the curriculum are interrelated. So not just math, reading, and science, we also have to understand that social, emotional skills, physical skills are all interrelated into their growth. We also see that we have to really focus on the student-based interest during the curriculum. So sometimes we just have, depending on the school district, it's a forced curriculum. You have to follow this page by this day and this number. But we also have to understand that these are kids, they have imaginations, and we really want to foster to those imaginations and their abilities, so that way they actually have an interest in what they're learning, so they can progress more, instead of having a fragmented learning scale. And then we also learned that we also want to have multiple opportunities to build those gross and fine motor skills, so having the kids stand up, jump around, use pencils, have them collect their own papers, not all the time doing it for them, even though we know they're 5, 6, or in the preschool ages. Sometimes we think that we have to do everything and accommodate for them, but we have to understand that they have to build these skills on their own. So having opportunities for them to go outside and inside to play is a really big thing. And then also we have to incorporate nutrition for them. Even at such a young age, we see that lots of the times all they have is fruit snacks and cupcakes and all the things that
are placed in the classroom with like fruit chips, but sometimes we have to also show them that an apple, an orange, and all those nutritious snacks are very important. And that's what we learned.
Thank you. Anything from curriculum that you want to add that is working for you? Any type of planning? Okay. How about the next area was language and literacy, I think. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's the language and literacy spokesperson?
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, so most of my table was kindergarten, and I teach preschool. And so they were very, very similar. The first area was listening, speaking, and understanding, and we just have some nice pictures on ours. So I'm
Yes,
not
you
sure if all
do.
of you can see them, but I'll talk about them too. We talked about having conversations in the classroom, not only with the students, but allowing them to have conversations with each other, using rich vocabulary, teaching the students how to listen. Let's see, again with home language, having books and CDs and people come in speaking those different languages. And then the next one was book reading and motivation. We talked about having diverse books, diverse titles, pictures on the front of books that represent your kids, languages that represent your kids. It talked about the vocabulary that's used. You can use nonverbal cues and visuals and synonyms to explain. If you have the real object, bring that in. Doing a lot of repeating. The next one was phonemic awareness. Oh, let me go back real quick. It talked about making the reading center or the library comfortable, also having fiction and nonfiction books. And then the next one, phonemic awareness, songs and poems, doing onset and rhyme, alliteration, and giving them a strong foundation in that area. The next one is writing, and it talked about getting the kids to know that their speech represents words or sounds or letters, and encouraging them to write those in different ways, lists and journals, drawings, displaying an alphabet chart so that they can make connections, providing them with a variety of materials, paper, pencils, markers, things like that, envelopes and clipboards, and displaying work, and teaching writing for a variety of purposes. We have Papa John's right now in my classroom, so we've been doing order taking and those different things, and the kids have been really into it. The next area was letter and print knowledge. We just talked about teaching the kids concepts about print while you're reading, pointing those different things out that are important, and really making your classroom a print-rich environment and displaying different things around the room. Building knowledge and comprehension. Again, it goes along with the books in the classroom and just asking questions, asking the open-ended questions, the how and why questions, and really giving your kids turns to answer questions and modeling speaking and listening in different situations like small groups or during play or during whole group time.
Great, thanks, Michelle. One of the things that I think ESSA has brought about that's a positive is looking at more at student growth. Because right in here, when we talk about language and literacy, how many of you have where they have to be reading at the end of kindergarten? Do you do Fountas and Pinnell? So, here's my soapbox about that. When Fountas and Pinnell changed their reading level to D at the end of the year, it was because they said so many kids are starting to read at that level because they've had preschool, they've been in childcare, they have full day kindergarten, so they bumped it up to a D based on that. We know, and some years you may get, and we'll show you some graphs later with really rich experiences, you can get kids much higher than a D, but some years you're going to have kids that are, if you get them to a B, you're going to be happy. So in order to progress on that, you have to be able to answer the comprehension questions. So really, the year should be spent working on them answering questions and explaining their thinking, like you were talking about. They need lots of times to talk so that they can start to make those connections with their text and all that stuff. So there's my soapbox about that. Okay, how about reasoning and problem solving? Anybody want to push back on me for that one? I'll take it, so, because
the whole premise behind it is to see where they started from and where they are at the end, and Fontes and Pinnell
right.
didn't take that into account. And I think the whole language and literacy said get to know your students and scaffold from where they started to the next level. And I think that's something that people forget.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, we've got a little researchy project going right now that's looking at first grade and what happens to those kids that came out of a very rich play-based kindergarten and were Bs in kindergarten. By mid-year first grade, they're Fs.
Because they were ready.
Because they had all the foundational skills built and then they were ready. They didn't spend a gazillion hours drilling and killing on phonemic awareness for an intervention that doesn't build to comprehension, because we tend to do our interventions in constrained skills, and measuring high levels of literacy, it has to do with comprehension, which is unconstrained skills, background knowledge and vocabulary. So you spend all that time on building background knowledge and language, that is going to explode when children are within their ZPD. It happens.
We will make sure that article, there's an article by Catherine Snow that's pretty recent that talks about constrained and unconstrained skills. And we've done constrained skills like how fast can you do your letter sounds? We've done how fast can you name your letters? And, you know, that is not what makes comprehension. So it's a great article and it's by experts in the reading field. So I'll make sure we get that uploaded.
Get Zaide.
Zaide.
I just want to apologize. I'm sorry about I thought I turned.
Oh, no.
Not a problem.
It's a safe crowd here.
I wanted to go back what Pat was saying. It has been really interesting and powerful year for me because I used to teach kinder, but in a separate building. It was just pre-K at kindergarten, so I didn't have a feedback for the first grade teacher to see how my students, based on kindergarten play-based setting, was doing in first grade. So this year I am in the same building, and the results and the powerful foundation that they receive in kinder is extraordinary. They are doing so well, focusing on the lowest, because it's what you were saying. We think as a teacher, oh my God, they didn't reach the bar of level D, but now they are where they are supposed to be in first grade because we did a powerful literacy base on and play during kindergarten. So it has been like, oh, my best prize ever.
Okay, Julie, we gotta go collect her data too.
What's that?
We gotta
I
go
know.
collect that data too. We'll be over.
Okay, who can do the reasoning and problem solving? Who's your spokesperson? They've already nominated you?
Apparently. So we actually had math, science, technology, and social studies. So we had like a lot of areas that we had to cover. But the underlying theme for all of them is that we found they really needed to be taught using reasoning, problem solving, and communicating. And all of those can be incorporated in your play. So, but they said in our book, they said that in math, the 3 main areas that needed to really be focused on, you can dabble in the other areas, but you really need to focus on number sense and operations, geometry and measurement. And if you're taking notes, those would be kids measures, Cog Math 2.
Oh, let's thank her for that.
Overachievers.
4 and 6. So in social studies, they really want you to focus on, that you really should focus on geography, civics, and history. Science, focus on life science and nature, physical science, and earth and space. And in technology, make sure it's thoughtful use, not just giving kids technology. Here, use this. Make sure it's being used as a tool, not the teacher. And make sure that boys and girls have equal access. That was a huge point. And above all, make sure it's connected to familiar life experiences.
That was my favorite part of theirs because there's a lot of articles of funds of knowledge that you really have to tap into their funds of knowledge. And the other piece about comprehension that kind of ties that in, on the kids measure, the LLD-6 is about comprehension, but the definition is not about reading and then comprehending, it's about how do they comprehend text read to them. And so it's a little bit of a shift knowing our emphasis is on that and not on what they can comprehend in their text. And last but not least, assessment. Who's doing assessment in your group? Come on, somebody. Oh, I'm going to hand you the thing.
Pedro?
Pedro. Hey, we've done our 100% of men then.
All right, so we talked about just basically like the four like beneficiary benefits of like having a different assessment. So the first one is, and it was pretty similar we saw from, it was like the exact same wording actually, I think in preschool and kindergarten. It was planning and adapting curriculum to meet each child's developmental and learning needs. So not just like teaching.
That's why you do assessment, yeah.
Yeah. So helping teachers and family members monitor children's progress. So getting like feedback from families, like what, you know, I've gotten like stuff in my classroom where parents will actually send me like writing samples that they do at home. So I can like compare it to what they do at school. So we have like a good communication there. Evaluating and improving teaching effectiveness. So just kind of like with DRDP that we do, just kind of looking at what's working in our classroom, just having different activities and stuff like that. And screening and diagnosis of children with disabilities or special learning or developmental needs. So I think one of the things that's said on there is like very important to look at when they first come in to the program and then just keep like re-looking at, you know, how they're doing, so.
What did they say was the overriding way you assess children in preschool and kindergarten? How do you do it?
What's your method?
What's your method? How do you collect data? Observation.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
It's like pictures, videos, notes, whatever you got.
Right.
Everything.
It's observational assessment is the recommended best practice till 3rd grade. So I don't think you will. Oh, they have to master the observational assessment in different settings across time, over time, and in different settings. I'll sing the song if you want me to sing the kids'
I was
song.
going to say, break into
Look at
it.
They know too. So what he mentioned, the DRDP, some districts, there's a couple districts that are piloting this year the preschool version of kids. So it's called the DRDP and it overlaps with kids. So that's what he was talking about with that. I hear my own personal thing about observational assessment versus on-the-spot, on-demand testing because my granddaughter in kindergarten, first of all in preschool, they did the Teaching Strategies Gold and I got all her portfolio and she was doing great, but they even gave MAP at the end of the preschool year. Measure of academic progress. And she had all these areas of concern. And I'm like, but the Teaching Strategies Gold said she was doing at grade level or better. So of course, and then I get into her kindergarten this year and they do MAP at the beginning of kindergarten and I happened to be there one of the days, only because I said, how am I gonna, I'm about to blow a gasket about where they have no play and all that. And Pat said, well, go volunteer. And so I did, and there's no way those kids know how to use a mouse, for one thing. And these kids, there was kids in tears, in tears. And so now my granddaughter, we were talking, Rowena and I were talking about our grandkids, her son and my granddaughter went to very developmentally appropriate preschools, and now they hate school and kindergarten because they don't play. And the day I was there, the teacher even said, one of the kids said, when are we going to have choice play? And she goes, you don't get to choose what you're going to do. I'm like, so anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but when we do other workshops, other places, or when I'm doing kids training, this is not how kindergarten is. Assessment is too many times, with Ames Webb and all, and that, making them do it on fluency. I see people that set that for their school improvement plans, that they have to fluently name letters. And I think, when did letter fluency, when I think you talked about that, some kids just need more time. They can name their letters, but they can't do it quickly. So anyway, all right. So I think we've built some more background knowledge. We're all coming from the same place. So we're going to shift a little bit now and start to talk about Propels, which is going to give you a framework of how to assess and move play ahead.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I have a couple slides here.
Wait a minute.
Okay,
I'm
anybody
looking for-
have this book or look at this book? Go back right
Wait.
after that one.
Where's this?
I moved it.
Oh,
Just go to the next slide.
okay.
Moved it this morning.
Okay. Go ahead.
Again, this is out of your book. That the teacher's moment-to-moment interactions with children are the most powerful determinant in learning outcomes. I think when you said that and the kids got really interested in something, I can get rid of calendar for now, or I can get rid of my large group because I'm going to get more power out of this teachable moment. And that's out of the book. Anybody see this book before? This is, it's just one of my go-tos recently. And it's called Powerful Interactions, How to Connect with Children to Extend Their Learning. The other new one that NACY's put out is called Big Questions. So those are just two really good books. But when we do workshops for teacher assistants especially, we go to this. This is the premise of Powerful Interactions. And if it's out of order or not in there, it's because of course I had to add something. One more thing this morning. If you follow these 3 steps, this gives you those powerful teachable moments. First of all, being present, just settling in with the child, listening, observing, seeing where they are, and then connecting to what their idea or interest is, and then extending, just adding one more thing. Maybe you're adding one prop or one piece of language or one thing about planning, because this is, we have the teacher assistants make a little poster and put in the room, because how many times do other adults come in and bombard kids with language? Like, what color is that? Well, how many of you have? What are you doing? And the kids are like, you just totally derailed my whole thought process. We are there to connect to what they're thinking about and extend what they're thinking about. Sorry, I added that one more thing. There was the break. Did you enjoy that? Okay. Do you want to do that one now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll do this one and we'll take a break.
I'll let you explain it. Stand up.
And then the lunch is
Anybody
here.
here do Kagan strategies? Lunch is
Oh,
here.
the
Okay.
Kagan crew have taught us so much.
They got a lot of good interactive strategies for children. And you can teach preschoolers these strategies. You can teach kindergarten students. And they're really nice interactive strategies.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a stand up, hand up, pair up around the question of what is working with your schedule, your daily schedule. If you're an administrator, you can use some ideas that you've seen working in classrooms. If you're a birth to 3 person, you can think about what you see working when you're doing a schedule with you're doing a home visit or doing a parent training, anything you can think about. And we're going to have 3 rotations, so you're going to talk to 3 different people. Ideally, we're going to try to have talk to somebody in preschool and somebody in kindergarten during this. So
and not your own peeps.
Not your own peeps. So preschool people, raise your hand again. Okay. So see, all you kindergarten folks, you want to make sure to connect with one of those people during one of your 3 rotations. Okay. I will tell you when to switch. All right. We'll do waterfall. So stand up, hand up, pair up. What's working in your schedule?
Stand up. Hand up and pair up with somebody.
What were the similar themes that you heard when in the conversations around schedule?
Of what's successful.
What are your takeaways of what works? Oh, say it loud and say it proud, my friend.
Student choice. A lot of the good things I heard were students were able to, choose what they do. There's options, I should say, so they don't just get to make it up, but having options is important.
Awesome. What else did you hear?
Kind of going along with that, just like a variety of plays. So maybe one day you're in the classroom doing kind of like center type plays, or maybe one day you're in the gym and you just give them materials and see what they do with them. Or the next day you can go outside and see what they do outside. So always kind of mixing it up and keeping them interested and just exposed to different kinds of play.
And remembering that everybody, even yourself, has a favorite type of play. And you tend to teach how your favorite type of play is. And so I didn't like rough and tumble, so I never let my preschool kids do that. So now I feel bad.
Other ahas.
Not being in a situation like this currently, but having been in one in the past, I think it really depends on the administrators in your building, what their view of play is and the impact it can have on the classrooms, because so often it's not an important thing to many people, and it reflects that in the classrooms.
Yeah, we were having a nice conversation about that. You know, if your administrators don't support it, the teachers nod their heads a lot and shut their door then, and it's never hard to convince the teachers that a play-based approach is best. And it's not that the administrators don't know, they just don't know. And the pressure they've got is different.
How many administrators, I've just started working with a brand new administrator. He's in an elementary building, and he was a high school teacher. And he said, come in, shut the door. You know, I don't know anything about this, right? And I said, that's what I'm here for. And I love this guy. I am absolutely, he's gonna be an amazing administrator because he's okay to ask a question. And so he said, oh, so I said, okay, so when you go in this kindergarten room, here's what you want to see. Have you seen that? And he's like, this room, yes, this room, no. And I'm like, okay, all right. So he knows what he's looking for, and it's really amazing. I'll tell you, at the Kids Summit, I did a presentation, and people came up to me to talk about schedule, and they turned their name tags around so I wouldn't know where they were from, to say, my administrator won't let me do this. And I'm struggling to collect data for my kids' assessment because I can't do it at table time when everybody's filling out worksheets. Yep, that is true. You really can't. And so we, really problem solving through that. So administrators are critical to the success of what you are all doing. They are critical.
And another resource we will upload for you that we uploaded for the last play workshop was, we have a oh, they're going to see it later today.
They're going to get it.
What to look for people going into a developmentally appropriate classroom. What the teacher should be doing, the students should be doing. And we're going to be having another webinar for administrators on this. Because like Pat says, it's usually that they just don't know. This handout is all aligned with Danielson framework. So that sometimes pulls administrators in pretty quickly, like, okay, good, then I can support, here's distinguished practice in a classroom.
So feel free to disseminate that idea and recruit.
And you're going to get one this
administrators.
afternoon.
Yeah.
I forgot we had.
Other ahas, other common themes about what makes your schedule work.
Just flexibility, like they said, if there's, you have calendar in 10 minutes, but they're doing something, just let them keep going. They're having a good time. They're learning more from that than they would from calendar.
Following the child's lead. ZPD. It's all goes back to Vygotsky, doesn't it? Any others? Rena?
Along the lines of flexibility, I was paired with, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Oh. She wants to remain anonymous. Sorry. She was saying that she puts her schedule where there's like a noisy time, a quiet time, a noisy time, a quiet time. So the kids, if they need to be like crazy and loud and rambunctious, they have that time to do that. And then they have the quiet time.
That's huge. That's huge.
And going back with flexibility, if you have the visual scale, that is crucial to have a visual, being able to go back and switch and just try to tell the kids, okay, we're going back, but now we are working with this that is really powerful, but we're going back. So able to take out and put back again.
Right. Your flexibility is great, but some kids really like that schedule not to get changed, right? And being able to show how that's okay, that we can change it and we can go back to that, because in real life, how many of you live your life daily rearranging things in your schedule? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone?
Everyone?
Yeah, everyone? Everyone. This is a life skill. And even in I don't think we have any self-contained preschool folks today, do we? But yeah, okay, even in a self-contained preschool where that schedule is, change of that schedule can get a little dicey, right? Giving kids the opportunity to do that once in a while is really an important life skill, for sure. Anything else? One thing that I heard is sufficient time to play. I heard several of you having that conversation, that, having enough time for kids to get into flow, right? To be able to get to that part where we really get deep is critical. Otherwise, you don't get the benefits from that self-regulation and developing executive functioning if you do this very low-level stuff all the time. And that's what we're going to do all afternoon, is work on how to crank up the play.
And one of the difficult measures that people often mention with kids is the engagement and persistence, because persistence means they have to return to something. So you have to have activities that go over days and over weeks, so that they can return to it and that you can, give them opportunities for that.
Our afternoon we're going to spend digging deeper into play and your role as a play facilitator and your role as a planner, a player, and all the different roles you have as a play person, right? And one of the things we're going to start with is a matrix, or it's a framework for teachers that's called PROPELS, okay? And PROPELS stands for Plan, Roles and Actions, Props, Extended Time, Language, and Scenarios. These are the tools in your toolbox that will help you scaffold play to the next level. And that's what we're going to work on today. Some of you have heard me say this before, so you guys can just jump right in and throw in your 2 cents anytime you want. PROPELS is the annotation or the reference is on your bibliography. It was developed by Elena Bordrova and Debbie Leong, who wrote the book Tools of the Mind. And it isn't, although it's not actually in the tools book, it came after that, and the reference on your bibliography is the article in Young Children that describes all of this. So what they did was they made a matrix of all of these mediators, all of these components of the your toolkit, and made descriptions of them for each level of play, of 5 levels of play, okay? So it is a 6x5 matrix, 5, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and propels down the side. On your table is this matrix. However, it's cut up into little pieces. So your job is to figure out, for example, when, let me give you okay, so you're going to get one of these and it'll say, plans, roles, actions are named prior to play. And you're going to look at your level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 levels of play and think, where does this fit? So this is a role, right? So it's going to be role. It'll go under the R category. And then you have to think, what level do kids say what they're going to do before they do it? Is that a level 1 player that does it? No. Is it a level 2 player? No. Is it a level 3 player? Probably, right? And so you're going to try to put this matrix together, thinking about what you know about developmental levels of children's play. Because remember, you guys are our experienced group. So I'm giving you a cognitively challenging task. I'm going to tell you that. I will then give you the completed matrix for you to check. What I'd like you to do is divide up all of these little cards. So not everyone has, one person shouldn't be manipulating them. You should be working together in a collaborative fashion so that you divide your materials and come up with a completed matrix. And Julie and I will be around to help you. Are there any questions about the activity? So I gave you a hint. This part, propels, will go down the side. In some of your packets, the ones that I did more recently, that is already done for you.
She's scaffolding.
I am scaffolding. Some of you, I did them a long time ago, and I didn't, and they're all cut up. Across the top, the levels of play, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So find those two pieces to start out with. This one and the levels across the top. And that will be a big help. All right? You may begin. What was challenging about doing this? This is the same thing. Oh, we have one for everyone. We have this that comes through the from the Young Children article. So you'll have one yourself.
I'll put it here if you want another one. You can take one.
So what was hard about this?
They're all very similar.
They're nuanced, right? Going up the levels is just a tweak every time. And so if you don't know your child development, you are in a world of hurt, right? Trying to figure out how to do that nuanced scaffolding. And that is why scaffolding play is such requires such amazing expertise. What else was difficult? Or what were your strategies that made it easier? I should try that too.
So we just looked at like what kind of looked like went together, and then we just went by the language and just kind of ordered it that way.
Okay, so I noticed some of you saw plan, and you're like, oh, this has plan in it. Oh, scenario, put all the scenarios together. So that really helps. And then once you got that, then you get to dig into the meat of the developmental sequence of what that looks like, right? And this is what you have to have internalized if you are going to be able to scaffold play, because you're not going to have that at your beck and call. And this is something you're going to have to practice. If you might feel you're really good at props, and Julie and I are different, we're good at different things. That's our life, right? And so there are some things that I'm really good at, like I'm really good at props and she's really good at scenarios. So whatever you're really good at, some of that will come very naturally, and then you might have to work on making yourself better at extending language or planning. Planning is usually one that's really hard for people, that they don't do that as much. And either at the beginning of planning or at the beginning of play or even during play. And that's one that really ups the executive functioning and really ups the self-regulation if you can work more planning into your play.
Are any of you using the SED5 out of kids? It's not one of the required ones, but I believe West Chicago uses it. That whole measure is sociodramatic play, that you can see a lot of the words, the planning, negotiating, organizing, that kind of piece.
All right. So we're going to get a chance now. We're going to look at some videos, and we're going to try to decide what level that they are based on this matrix, based on this schema.
And you could see in the bottom the reference, it's from the Young Children in January 12th. If you can download that, it's in our references, but you can get that from Defending the Early Years. That website has a lot of seminal articles that have come about. So Defending the Early Years, you can download the whole article that goes with it.
Okay? So we're going to take a look at Hamilton's towing. Hamilton's towing. And we're gonna look at the little blonde guy. Yeah, you've seen this, I think, Rita. We're gonna look at the little blonde guy and think about what level he is. Now here, I'm going to ask you to do this as an independent activity. Let's practice your self-regulation on this one. Independently decide if he's a level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on this matrix or your handout, which is probably easier to read, okay? And then we're going to debrief it. So all you got to do is look at the little blondie and see what level you think he is.
Who was a 2?
Who thought he was a 2? He's a very solid 2. Why was he a 2?
Did somebody here have a 2?
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think it was him using the phone as a prop.
All right. So he was using his phone, the objects as props, right? So he's using a phone as a phone. He wasn't using a block as a phone. Absolutely right. Okay. What do you think, if you thought he was a 3, which characteristic sort of made you think, or characteristics made you think he was more 3-like? You have, Julie?
I thought he was a 3 because he kept insisting on using the same white phone. When the other little boy tried to give him a different phone, he kept saying, no, the white one, I need the white one.
Right.
So to me, that was, he had a very specific prop for his phone conversations.
Right. He had a little rigidity and not ability to be flexible, right? So he again needed his prop, but he needed that one prop, not able to switch that, which is sort of the same as, you know, plays with objects as props. He needed the prop to be his role as well. So he's probably up to a 3 because he did need his role to be that, his prop to be that role guy. Michelle?
I feel like I need more information than what was presented because maybe yesterday their towing company only had the white phone, and that's why he kept insisting on the white phone versus the other phone.
Right.
And then for me, I was between a 3 and a 4 because I wanted to see if he was working for the towing company, him get up, go get his truck, do that whole part. So that's where my head was.
Right. So obviously I just showed you a snippet, and when you're doing your observational assessments, you're only seeing snippets, right? And that's why you have to do multiple observations over time. And Julie's going to have to sing it.
And in different settings.
Right? So that's why no single one is ever going to be adequate. But for this purpose, we don't have enough time to do all that. Those of you who thought he was a 4, what did you see? Which of these characteristics popped out to you as a 4? Was it planning, role, props, time?
I think he has accomplished some multiple roles. He went back and forth. And also when he answered the phone, I like how he changed his tone of voice. So that's what I like.
He had a little bit of role speech in there, right? So if you look at language under 4, when he answered the phone, Hamilton's towing, he was not telling the girl how to cut his hair, right? That he could use role speech. That's a huge, huge indicator at a level 4 is when kids are using role speech. The other thing is he was doing multiple roles at one time, right? He's a multitasker par excellence. He's getting his hair done, and he's managing, and he's handling his business, and he's telling somebody else what to do. He's other regulating. He's the boss, right? So that shows you he's moving into the 4. But with his props, he could not do a symbolic prop. So in that aspect, he wasn't. Did he plan the scenario in advance?
If we had more info, maybe we'd know, but.
Probably not, because, I mean, he might have had some idea of Hamilton's towing. He probably just didn't come up with that out of nothing. As Michelle said, there's probably some precursor. But did he decide that all of these things were going to happen and that he'd have a minion doing things? I doubt it. It doesn't look like that. So he's a solid 3 for sure, with some peaks into 4. All right, so turn and talk just to the person next to you. If you were going to scaffold him to the next level, how might you scaffold him using a plan, excuse me, a plan, or amplifying his role, or adding some roles and actions, or how might you introduce a different kind of a prop? How would you extend language, or how would you beef up the scenario or introduce a different scenario? Just turn and talk to your partner and generate a couple ideas of what kind of scaffold you might be able to do. Who thought of a way to scaffold using planning?
Nobody ever does.
This is the one that really is hard for people to think about. For planning, you might, and when he's like, oh no, I have 2 calls. And then you might go in and say, oh my gosh, what if you get 1 more call? What will happen? And he has to plan something. He has to think ahead. Just you follow the lead. You follow their lead. Join in their play.
I was thinking of a kindergarten one time. The teacher said, would you just do a fishbowl and show me what you mean by helping them create scenarios? And all I did was, you know, they only played house in the kitchen. So we said, okay, we sat with a group of kids. What are we going to do in the house? And then one little girl says, a birthday party. Okay, that's great. And then a little boy said, the grandma's going to come from Mexico. And then another little one said, and the sink breaks and the water leaks everywhere. So I would have never gone there. I just let them offer some ideas, and then you should have seen that rich play that day.
Right, then you step out, right? So sometimes you can stop the play and do that, you know, if it's really boring and very common scripts. Or the next day, as we were talking about, you might be able to read a book and enrich some background knowledge, or use a video, or introduce, you know, some more deeper background knowledge, which all can fit in plan. But you can plan on the moment, just 1 step ahead, too, 1 step ahead. If you can get planning to go all the way back to the beginning, you're going to get richer and richer and richer play. Some of these guys do play plans, where they do written plans, where they think about what are we going to do, who are we going to do it with, where are we going to do it, what's going to happen. That's a whole different level that we aren't going to get into today. But that's also can happen at that plan level. Did somebody think about a role? Anybody have a role that they scaffolded? An additional role? Or what role did you have? I'll give it back.
Sarah suggested planning because she actually said, you know, how many calls do you think you're going to get today? It seems like it's a busy day. And then we talked about, you know, what could happen? And she came up with this idea that, you know, we're going to have to go rescue someone out of a ditch, which led us to, well, who else do you think you're going to need to call to go help besides just your tow truck, which would lead to maybe somebody coming to be a fireman or policeman or an ambulance.
Or, as Michelle said back there, that you have to make a call to get somebody to come and get you, right? Say, oh my gosh, come and get me. My car broke down. All right? So some additional roles could be, you know, you could add a baby to the scenario where your car broke down. Who's ever been in the car breaking down with their baby? Me. That's a whole very rich scenario, isn't it? You can think about, oh, you have a worker, right? You had a minion there that could turn into your worker. And then you could have a customer. So you have a worker and a customer in there. Because many of you went to props. I heard lots of props. What props did you add? Clothing, right? Trucks, cars, right? Storefront. Props are always an easy, powerful way to get just that one next step. And it doesn't mean you have to have the prop. You might think about how do you make the prop, right? So I was just telling these guys about the zombie. We had the zombie apocalypse, and the teacher's like, we don't play zombies here. And so there was a zombie scenario going on, and there was some good stuff happening, but people were, you know, the zombies are eating people and killing people. And granted, not the best play, but there was something going on, and she shut it down, and the kids started lining up the blocks. That's it. Lining up the blocks. So that wasn't a very rich scenario. So I went back in and I came in as a zombie. Hi, my name's Zombie Pat. What's your name? Oh, hey, do you want to play with me? What do you want to play? And all of a sudden the kid goes, a skateboard. Okay, I never had a zombie do a skateboard. I said, well, how are we going to get a skateboard? And he goes, and he gets up and he runs over to the maker space and gets a little piece of yellow paper and brings it over and he goes, here's a skateboard, here's my skateboard. And I went, I don't get a skateboard? He goes, oh, sorry. And he went back and he got a skateboard. And then we spent like 3 minutes trying to figure out how to attach the skateboard to the zombies' feet. And so then we skated around. Then they ate each other again for a little while, and then we had to do something else, right? So thinking about how you can add a prop to change the action, to change the role, and get kids to be thinking about how that's going to work. Language, did anybody think about a language? So an easy language one on this one is, Hamilton's towing, then you get somebody to be the customer. My car broke down. Where are you? I'll be there in a few minutes. How much does it cost? I don't have any money. I have a credit card. Thinking about what is the language you need to play that. And then finally the scenario. Did anybody come up with a scenario? Some extended scenarios. Yes, I know you did. I heard a couple. Scenarios.
Bring the car to a junkyard, where you bring it to, what's going to happen after you pick it up, after you get the call.
Yep.
Junkyard thing, that could be awesome.
Junkyard. Yeah, that's wonderful.
See, it's not stereotypical. You're
The ditch, somebody had the car going in the ditch. All right, so that's a good one.
She's got background knowledge.
There could be a crash, a scenario with a crash. So you think about all these different possible scenarios, okay? You get that idea? Okay, we're going to try another one. This is not as easy as you think, right?
And while Pat's getting that, that's something what I use a lot when I'm coaching is go in and look at the kids and I just circle. And a lot of times the circles are way down here for planning, but they might have some good roles. And it's nice to be able to say, and look at the next step. Which next step do you think is going to be easiest for you to move ahead? Now, we've never used this video before. Wait a minute, where is she? She's not even in the room. Oh, good. If you've been to kids training, we've showed this at some kids trainings, but the star of the show is in our room today, and we use her video all the time.
All right. Do you want to set this up?
Yeah, so I'll let Zaide, would you like to set up what happened in this video? How did this come about? What was your theme? What was your theme at that time of the year?
Well, at that time it was the airport, and we just create different, in order to build that mature play, we create different areas. In one was the check-in in the airport, then they move to security. First of all, they start on travel agency to find where they're going to. Then they do the process to the security and to fly to the destination of the.
Right, and there are pilots and co-pilots and attendants for doing food, and there, the security gate alone was a physics experiment, right? Trying to get that gate to stand up and to do it the way they want it.
Also remember that we were talking about involving families into the play. Those luggage that they have there, was our family there in the basket. That was our family project. So they need to put what they wanted to take into their trip. And that made families aware of what they are doing in the classroom. And also, of course, they were invited to the classroom to take a flight.
And this was the TSA up there, right? That was a TSA scanner.
So this is in Spanish, but you won't need to understand Spanish to be able to follow this scene.
Okay, so this is who we're looking at. What level?
It was obvious that she had planned in advance because she knew exactly what she was getting. When he checked in, she went right under the counter. She grabbed exactly what she needed, handed it to him, told him exactly what he needed to know.
Yep, right. So there was planning. She knew her scenario. She knew what her actions were for her role, right? And even when she switched, she could switch actions, she could switch roles, and she knew what to do in all of those cases. So she is a level 4 girl, right? And what we used to say, when Elgin, we said that, again, given children's developmental level, but what we wanted to see was children leaving preschool at a level 4. If you've got a typically developing kid, a level 4 is what you're shooting for. You send level 4s to kindergarten teachers, are you a happy person? Look at the self-regulation. She had to stand there a long time before they got loaded, went through TSA and got loaded on the plane before she got to take her next role, and she could without causing any trouble. That's the self-regulation that lets you sit at a reading table and pay attention, right? Instead of being under the table and finding something else to do. Any questions about that? Because now we're going to application.
I just wanted to show you that when we talk about lower level players too, you want to make sure, whoops, go back one, that you can put some visual prompts out. Sometimes they need to know, what am I supposed to do when I go to Play-Doh? And you can release a responsibility for you always telling them, check your sheet. And then on the next slide, some of your, no, I don't know if we want that one. Some of your higher level players, when Zaide talked about some, that making props for your different centers, this is, they can make their own alphabet board. They were playing school in the parts of the school, and that's their keyboard for the secretary and the walkie-talkie where the secretary has to call the custodian.
And the custodian role was a very coveted role in that room. So the custodian role, he was at school. I saw him at the airport. He's been in almost every scenario. And he gets the walkie-talkie. He gets to have the mop and the bucket on rollers. And then inside it has, what's inside the bucket?
It was yellow shredded paper for the Voban.
Yellow shredded. And what was it?
It's the Voban for the vomit. Yes. Hold on a sec.
And sometimes we as a teacher have no budget in the school to do field trip. That is crucial before we start a thematic unit. So I did the school unit because that was something that they know, to go to their know to their know, and that's what made that school thematic unit so powerful, because they knew the secretary, the custodian, and the lunch lady. So, and then they can relate to them in the hallways, whatever they see, then, oh, there's Mr. Tai, oh, So if you don't have the support to go outside, just think on some thematic unit that you can do just in the building.
My favorite one was when I was a principal, they came in and interviewed me in my office. And I had a briefcase. I was a special ed person too, and I had IEP papers, 5 tons of them. And they picked up my briefcase, and it was really heavy. So I went in one of the rooms, and they had made a suitcase and put some really heavy blocks in there because it was so heavy. And the other thing, these things tell you a lot. And the other thing that they did was they made all kinds of little notes, messages, and piled the messages on the desk, the principal's desk, really high. Like, oh my God, they look like they see I'm such a mess here. But those were the salient features from my office that they noted. And so somebody took that, and actually that was really nice for a couple of the kids that had needed sensory stuff. The teacher would like, why don't you go take that suitcase around and deliver it to somebody? All right, so now your turn is we're gonna play, okay? So ideally, I want you in groups of 3. And so there can be 2 groups of 3 at each table.
The table's in the back with the
and
toys.
The table, and your choices are, and you will get to choose what you want to play with, right? There's some little Legos over here. This is sand. Back here is Tea Party and some Legos. Here we have Play-Doh and some inch cubes. Here we have magnetiles and some Play-Doh. So 3, 3. So one of you is going to be a teacher and 2 students. We'll be flexible on that as much as we can manage, right? So the first teacher, the kids are gonna make a scenario, you're gonna play. Not say what kids are gonna do, you're gonna play that, right? Scaffold using one of those, particularly one that you need more practice on. Then I will stop you and we'll change roles. So each of the 3 people will have a time to be a teacher and a student, okay? Any preguntitas on that one? Any questions? Okay, you may come and select your preferred material.
Funds of knowledge.
We started using the props in a very traditional tea party manner. And after our tea party ended, we transitioned to using them as blocks. And so we built a tower out of them.
How did you get to that point? Did your teacher suggest it, or did the idea come from the kids?
I was a kid, and it came from my house this morning at my kitchen table with my own child, where she decided to stack up all of her breakfast utensils into a giant pile.
Background knowledge.
So when my friend, partner, student was tired of playing with the tea party, I suggested that we build a tower.
Right. Okay.
And then we knocked it down.
And then I saw that they were kind of running out of ideas with the tea party set. It's pretty close. They're not as open-ended as a lot of things. So I just threw a couple little critters in there. And then what did you make?
So then we went to Disney World, and all of our little people friends, after the people friends had a tea party, then we went to Disney, and they're on the teacup ride. So they're all going on a ride.
Right. So you added a scenario, you added roles, you added actions. Did you talk when you were doing that?
Yes, our characters had names.
Characters had names.
They went to the dentist.
Did they talk to each other? Was there dialogue?
They did. We woke one up from a nap, and we helped one who got sick on the ride.
So they scaffolded using 5 out of those 6, well, and actually you got extended time out of it. So you used every single one of them. Woohoo! That's why it lasted this long.
We are successful kindergartners.
You are.
Yay! What a fun.
Awesome.
Who else had a scenario, or what else could you share?
So in this group, we first had a non-verbal student.
A non-verbal? Okay.
Yeah, so we start building our tower, like the Willis Tower in Chicago. But before that, we were trying to ask her what she was eating during lunchtime, because she have no language. So the teacher guided us to show these 3 Play-Doh to convert this into a soup. So we helped her to build a little bit more language, like broccoli soup or tomato and chicken noodle soup. So after that we create that language and we start building our knowledge into the Willis Tower, we found that our neighbors, they have some interesting animals there. So the teacher asked them what they are building, and they said that it was the Lincoln Park Zoo. So we found that we can share our zookeeper that we have in our play to them, and they share to us their worker. So we start sharing between our needs that we can continue with our play.
Wow. Thank you. Okay. So you there was a new plan based on what the props were, and that's based on this interaction.
We had one more comment for this. Okay.
Well, Sandra and I did not have a teacher, so we just started talking, and we came up with this idea that looking at what we had here, let's start a zoo. So we started containing all of our reptiles because we didn't want them getting out, going all these different places. So we started building walls and putting them in, and then we were just happy that our neighbors across town helped us to get some people over here to keep the animals in.
Again, you saw some roles. They were constructing. They had roles of zookeeper and some of the critters. So I imagine the critters had some actions to do, right? Some of the animals. And you used your props to create a scenario. So you can see as a teacher did all of those things, it kept the time going and keep people more engaged.
They had a good question here. Would you talk about how it's extending the time?
Oh, I said that I have some students that can go a long period of time, and then I have some that just end within 10 to 12 minutes.
Yep.
We talked about maybe getting them to sit down and plan first, and then going into building something or creating their scenario, and then they can build on from that.
And we talked about even having some visual props, some visual reminders of what all their scenery could be.
Right.
Their scene scenario.
And then my fellow friends talked about how my students always plan what they're going to do outside for recess.
Oh.
And they say, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that during snack time. And so then we talked about how they could write that down and would be a great example for planning so that when they're doing something else for choice time, they're used to planning and then they can transition that. So I thought that was a great idea.
Excellent.
Thank you.
That's awesome. I've seen in a kindergarten, the same group of kids, probably, they decided that they were going to do a puppet show, and they took a piece of paper and divided it in quadrants and drew 4 scenes for the puppet show. And the negotiations for what things were going to happen was amazing. But then when they went to the actual puppet show, the puppet show was so much better than their previous puppet shows had been. And they started that kind of on their own, and then everybody else started drawing the scenes for their own version and left them there so other people could play their scenarios, which was, nothing I'd ever seen before.
And you're building story elements. You're building that whole idea of the beginning, middle, and ending, and problems, and characters, and setting, and
so you're taking all that literacy stuff, so that's fabulous. Okay.
All
You
right.
want to set the next one up?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to now,
Well, I guess we don't need
you're going to get some time to plan some units. So you can think about some units that you might have coming up, some units of study, or if you want to start thinking about what does your fall look like? What are you going to do? So you can work with your teams if you want to do that, the people that you came with, but you can decide whether or not you're going to bring your paper to the table and write there to put it up, because when we're done, we're going to carousel them so that you can add more ideas. So let's say, for example, you decided in the spring we're going to do the garden shop. You want to think about what kind of roles could you have, what kind of props, what kind of scenarios could you have, and put that on your paper. You can do it, this is some other examples.
This is
So you
one
want
way.
to think about your scenarios, roles, and props. You could put it in this type of structure, if that works for you, or if you're more of a mapper where you want to do a web, whatever works for your team. Because after everybody kind of gets a skeleton of a topic, you're going to get to add to the other topics, and then we'll make sure we take pictures so you've got some ideas. So as you develop it, how could that topic unit of study become a little broader so it's not just seeds? But you've got a great start for that.
So those of you who sort of use this framework already, doing it together with the crew today, what was useful for you today in the planning? Other people's perspectives. It's really hard to do this all by yourself, I think. And so does everybody else, right? So having partners, thought partners is critical.
Other people's perspectives.
Other people, there we go. All right, for those of you who haven't planned that this way, what did you think of the process? Who hasn't planned this way?
You said you hadn't usually planned this way before? You have, okay.
You guys, have you planned this way before? Okay, so what
was helpful?
Once you get a scenario started, then you can kind of feed off of that. So like we started, we were like, our main idea was plants, and then we went with a greenhouse because we have a garden at our school that we allow the kids to plant with. Well, how can we extend that? What can they do after they plant? What might they think of? So we kind of went into our students' minds and what do they like to do? And then we were talking about produce and eating the healthy foods and all that other stuff. And just after that, it just kind of steamrolls.
That's right. So once you get one idea going, and what happened with you guys over here, Zaide's group? So,
well, they just now hung their poster.
What happened there, huh?
For us was really interesting because
Oh,
even though we have done before, it was a challenge today to start with new thematic units. So we as a team create a new thematic that we are just waiting to start probably in the couple of weeks, starting with the carnival. And for us having in mind that you need to have the areas to run so the student can go back and forth from one area to the other one, so that that increase the level of play.
And you were kind of building it off. Pat reminded them that in Elgin there is a festival park where these kinds of things happen, and the kids have probably been there, where there's concerts and food trucks and dancing and ice cream and things. So they probably have some background knowledge of this.
But it's interesting that, they took sort of some pieces of ideas and taken it to like the next level, right? So that there's all these different levels, and you all thought about your kids and your neighborhoods and your communities and what kids are bringing to the table and how well you know them. That's the underpinnings of a successful unit in terms of thinking about the high level of play. Zaide.
Oh.
First of all, we wanted to do something with food. So kind of Italian food, Mexican food, etc. But we say, okay, we can have all the kids doing the same thing, even though it's different kind of food. So from there, Pat helped us to come, okay, where do we find the food truck? In a carnival. So from there, you keep building your area. So you need to think on your students and the roles that they are playing. So all the areas had to have a role involved in your thematic unit.
And that's how you will extend the time, is if they can leave one area of the room that happened to be the ice cream center and decide, okay, now I'm ready to go over to ride the carnival rides, because then they've got another place to go to keep extending their scenarios.
That will get you 60 minutes every day for weeks, right? Not a problem.
We've done in our planning. We just did in our planning as well, is then we added on the open-ended questions that you could ask, and we did them as effective, reflective, analytical, and hypothetical questions. And what types of questions in those 4 different types could we be asking the students, so that was planned out in our heads before we ever began playing with them.
And I talked earlier about that, things about I notice, I wonder. I will make sure that article is uploaded, because this one on teaching children to generate questions. We have to do all this self-talk and modeling, but they need to be able to generate questions too. So I just have loved that article. So.
Right. But that's great, that this whole idea of planning your plan. I was telling Julie on the way home, on the way here, that I just did a second grade or a kindergarten read aloud in Spanish. So it takes a lot more planning for me to do that in Spanish. I'm like, man, I had thinking about the questions and how I wanted to ask the question exactly in Spanish. Spanish is not my first language, and so I'm like, it took a long time to plan that. So this idea of planning the questions ahead of time to get at those different thinking levels is really an awesome one. Rena?
What were those 4 domains again? Reflective, analytical.
You want to say the 4 domains? One more time.
We looked at hypothetical, analytical, reflective, and affective. So like I feel, I think, I believe type questions for the affective.
Thanks. All right. You want to do the last? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think we all have to remember that just because we plan these doesn't mean that everybody's ready for it.
Yeah, correct.
We're providing an opportunity for them, but not every student in our room is ready to take advantage. We could provide that, but you're still going to have the kid that's going to play with the blocks and just build the tower.
Correct.
And that has to be okay.
Yep. Not only okay, there should be, this was our dictum, there needed to be a level of sensory play at every center. So for those kids that were at sensory level play, at that level 1 play, there's something for them to do everywhere. And then you build roles and those other roles and actions and scenarios on top of it. Because you're always within a child's ZPD. Right. Thank you for reminding us about that. That's super important. All right.
Okay, so as we end the day, we wanted to talk just briefly about that you can still have positive outcomes by doing more play-based learning and play-based instruction. And the ladies that had to leave today, she said, what can I take back to my superintendent? Because he wants to know, what are we going to be jeopardizing if we go to this level of play? And so I was going to show you a little bit of some data we had from, whoopsie. This was, when we didn't have full-day kindergarten in Elgin yet, we had full-day kindergarten intervention for the lowest literacy kids. So in English, it was usually the kids that had less than 7 letters, and in Spanish, they had no letters, no sounds for letters or syllables, and those are the kids that got to come to full-day kindergarten. Now, I would argue it wasn't the full day that made the difference. What made the difference was class size and excellent instruction. So, but they were at a play-based level learning, and at that time, the goal was a C in kindergarten. So this is where all of the kids came out, the English and the dual language classes. 72% of them were reading at a C or above. We still had, those kids that weren't quite there yet. But if we took just the dual language, I can't see what that percentage is up there, but look at where those kids were. And these were kids that did not know a letter or a sound when they came in at the beginning of the year.
0.
So there is evidence, and there's a lot of research that says the outcomes for children are there. It's just we have to bring that kind of research to people. And like Pat said, we really have to research now what's happening in first grade. And as we gather more data with the kids' instrument, and we find out what kind of growth they make, we find out how we can communicate that growth to first grade teachers so they start right where the children are. That's what's going to make the impact long term. So, any questions or comments you want to make that it's just been burning in your head, you had to get out and maybe not the right time came up? Okay. So remember that we will put, would you want to hand out? This is a self-evaluation for you.
Yes, I'll hand up.
We took that, that document that's what to look for in a developmentally appropriate classroom, how you would rate yourself, what your next steps would be. And this is, you can feel free to share this with your superintendents to see we are aligning best practices in distinguished teaching with developmentally appropriate practices. And I know ISU is coming out, going to be out soon, the videos. They've been taking videos of what best practice looks like in preschool and kindergarten and how that aligns with Danielson and what to look for when you're looking at these videos. So I think that's going to be a very powerful tool for administration when they start to see this is what should be happening in classrooms, even according to the components of Danielson.
Turn and talk?
Yes.
Okay. 2 more things. We're going to do a turn and talk, and just turn to the person next to you and say one thing that is resonating, one next step for you. What do you want to take away from today? Something that you're going to do, some action that you're going to do as a result of thinking with us today. Just turn and talk and tell your buddy that.
We're talking about being more mindful of the scenarios that we're putting together in our dramatic play or in any other area that we're deciding that we're going to make, and be more mindful about the role cards and how important those are.
So we will also load some more articles on the website along with the pictures. And I'm excited to think that we have pockets across the state that are already doing this amazing thing. And make sure you think about doing some action research. As you're implementing something new, take some data, because we know if you have the data, people will believe you. So.
And remember, we have your names on lists, so we know where you are too. So please feel free to email us too and share great ideas and cool things that have happened.